Dr. Gordon Neufeld is a world leader in child developmental theory. We liberate children, he says, not by making them work for our love, but by letting them rest in it.
Dr. Neufeld's best-selling book, Hold On to Your Kids, his international coursework and training institute lay the foundation for much of what we are now discovering about the essential nature of play in both children and adults.
Okay, I'm hoping that this is going to come across as a compliment. I mean it to be. But sitting with Dr. Neufeld, it kind of felt like spending an afternoon with Gandalf. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, he does have a certain timeless wisdom to his presence.
He does. And I think this will be an interview that is going to invite multiple listenings.
Absolutely. Well, he's a developmental theorist whose mission is to help parents make sense of their preschoolers. And as such, his language and his theories are all logically ordered to build on one another. So there was many times when we were putting this episode together that we would
hear things we hadn't heard before.
Yeah, and they just kept opening.
Layers of richness.
We would hear it, we'd go, wow.
Didn't hear that the first time.
I know. His focus is to identify developmental stages in childhood.
And the consequences of deprivation of those stages and how they affect how we emerge into adulthood.
It really sheds a new light on how we look at our parenting and we look at our children and we look at ourselves as adults.
Preschoolers hold the secrets to human development. If you can understand the preschooler from inside out, you really can understand everything. They represent every possible disorder. They qualify for it, not because there's anything wrong, simply because of developmental deficits. Our problems as adults are when we don't grow out of the preschooler period.
I'm Rachel Cram.
And I'm Roy Salmond, and welcome to Family 360.
Conversations exploring life together. Dr. Gordon Neufeld, thank you so much for allowing us to come into your home and spend a bit of time with you. This is a real honor.
My pleasure.
I want to start off with just asking you, you're in your 5th decade of this work. Your work on play and your years of practical and theoretical study greatly influence how we now make sense of preschoolers and even of ourselves. So at this stage in your life, what is it that fuels you to keep going, to keep pushing to know more?
Unfinished business. For me, it's all about insight, making sense of things. And it takes a while. And it's a big world out there, and there's a lot to make sense of.
Yeah.
You know, I love being a grandparent. I have now 3, one right in that age, 4 years of age, and 2 just coming into kindergarten. But it's given me another whole window right close into their functioning and an appreciation, again, of putting all the pieces together theoretically. And that's what I love about preschoolers. Preschoolers hold the secrets to human development. If you can understand the preschooler from inside out, you really can understand everything. They represent every possible disorder. Usually they qualify for 5 diagnoses right off the top. Oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, an anxiety disorder or 2, a bipolar disorder. They qualify for it, not because there's anything wrong, simply because of developmental deficits. So if you can understand those, way back, Piaget, one of the greatest developmentalists, said that preschoolers are like no other. They are completely different. And when we understand their differentness, and we're not trying to make them like us, when we can truly get a sense of them, they really do solve the riddles of the universe.
Are preschoolers the main focus of your research?
Everything begins there, really. Everything begins there. It's understanding what those deficits are and what the resolutions there are. There's no guarantee of growing up. There's no guarantee. There's many, many adults that are preschoolers with adult bodies. Our problems as adults are when we don't grow out of the preschooler period.
Do you have something that you're just hungering to know more about right now? Like, is there something that drives you to think, this area, I'm fascinated by it?
Yes, there is. In a lot of different sciences, what is emerging is the role of play, of true play, in human development. And this is coming from all different areas of science: neuroscience, anthropology, evolutionary biology. It's coming from the arts, the expressive arts, music, dance, and so on. If we understand what it really is about, it is equally as applicable to adults as it is to children.
That's so interesting. Can you explain that?
When we have been all about outcome and work and accomplishment, there comes a realization that that's not what life is about, is that there was something else. And it's emerging into the newest science. It's only about 10 years old now, with huge international conferences, is the science of play. And it's a multidisciplinary science. But what is so significant is that this is the key to, how should I put it? Play is nature incognito. And it ends up to be this context of true play, which is actually the place of true rest in the system. It is unfolding as the most significant understanding in terms of human psychology. Culture, religion, all of these things are being reframed in a new way as examples of where play is absolutely essential. And what is happening is we're losing the place of play. Children are behind screens. We have become outcome-based. School is all about work, not about preserving that place of play. And that is interfering. There's something...
Gordon, can you define what you mean by play? I'm sensing you're meaning something more than games or toys.
The kind of play I'm talking about is emotionally based play. It is emotional playgrounds. We usually think of play as toys and so on, and that's not the kind of play I mean. But even the play that simply has to do with physical play and physical playgrounds has reduced significantly in the last 2 generations and paralleled exactly the increase in mental illness and all kinds of behavioral problems. It exactly parallels that. And now we have all kinds of research. When we deprive monkeys of play, they develop all the kinds of problems that humans develop. And so it's going back to play deprivation, and the most important thing to preserve for our young children is play.
So when you're saying it doesn't necessarily have to do with toys and playgrounds, is it more that it has to do with giving the space for that, the time, the removal of structure or of expectations? Like what creates...
All of that is important, Rachel. Time, space for this, but there also have to be conditions that are conducive. Somehow the parents need to take care of the drive for connection. As soon as the child's attachment needs are met, a young child, they spontaneously emerge into play. It happens, but we've got to do the work.
So what is the work, Gordon? What do you see as the role of the parent in that?
The role of the parent is to preserve a sense of connection with the child, and when this is there, the child automatically, if the conditions are conducive, ventures forth into this wonderful play that is from inside out. It is a bubble of safety. It is not for real, and it's not outcome-based. And there are 7 distinctives of true play, which are now being discovered. Books are being written on them. And again, tingles go down my spine when I realize what's emerging was right underneath our noses about something that we all thought was frivolous, that didn't count, that was just for children and about toys, and now is the most significant thing of all. In fact, I am trying to reincorporate for myself the place of play in my life. It's becoming the single most important factor in emotional health and well-being.
I feel like you've always talked about play. Play as a way to come into your own being, as a way you come into your own person. But as I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking this is an even greater construct. Is that fair to say that?
Perhaps I could clarify. You're right in the sense that I've always talked about play. It's emergent play. And emergent play is when you come into your own selfhood. And that kind of emergent play takes place, again, when a child is satiated in terms of their needs for connection and togetherness. And that is true, but it's not only about venturing forth into one's own person. This is a play that's absolutely essential for our emotions. Emotions have work to do. They need to have a place of rest. This is where a child rests from the work of attachment, from the work of emotion. So it is a far deeper construct here. In evolutionary history, when emotion first appears in birds, when it first appears in mammals, play is there immediately. And so it's as if the way nature takes care of us is through our emotions. Emotions are meant to serve us, but play takes care of our emotions. And when we have insufficient play in our life as adults, when we don't have that bubble of outcome-based activity, that bubble in which things are not for real, etc., we suffer tremendously. We get emotionally exhausted.
Mm. Thank you for that incredible answer to my question about where life is heading for you. And I feel like I'm going to have to beg you to come back and interview a year from now and after, just to hear where you're going with this. I'm going to change direction a little bit now. One of the thoughts that's fueled this podcast is a quote by Mahatma Gandhi, where he says, if we want to reach real peace in the world, we must begin with the children. And you speak all the time about beginning with the children. So from that vantage point, where would you start with something like that?
This is a true statement in a number of ways. Unless the conditions are conducive, a child doesn't develop a sense of separateness. If they don't develop a sense of separateness, they don't treat others as separate beings. And that is the basis of all true relationship. It is also true in the way that childhood is a time of adaptation, a time when we come to terms with futility in our life, with the things that we cannot change, with the things we have no control over. We all have the capacity to adapt, but that requires conditions, again, that are conducive and parents that help it along. It's only when children can adapt to the circumstances that are out of their control, to not getting their way, to the futility that they experience, that they can come to be at peace with a world in which not everything goes their way. The number one sign of a child not adapting is attacking energy.
So then, just to clarify, that attacking energy occurs when we do not get what we want, when we have not come to terms with futility.
Yes. And the interesting thing about futility is such an important experience that when we feel futility, it moves us to tears. And of course, there's all kinds of tears. Tears cried to onions, tears cried to upset, all kinds of tears. But the tears cried to futility is the tears of sadness, the tears of disappointment. Those tears are a very different tear. They're a different tear chemically in us even. The physiology of the tear is different. And so the key to adaptation, you could say, is a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old who is able to have his tears about what he can't change in his world when he can't have his way. That adaptation brings a child to be able to live with the world that is not perfect, live with a partner that is not perfect, all kinds of things. That is so key. But the most important time of adaptation is that time before 5 years of age.
Now, you speak about there being developmental stages, about our capacity for relationship emerging through developmental stages. I'm wondering, can you walk us through those stages?
The capacity for relationship is a capacity that is developed through at least 6 stages. They're spontaneous, but they're not inevitable.
So by not inevitable, you're meaning our capacity for relationship emerges through conditions that are conducive.
Yes, developing the capacity for relationship is extremely important because we're not born with a capacity for relationship. We're born with a need for contact, and that's primarily based through the senses. And so it...
and does that tie into the reason why you have to hold children close and...
yes, continuity of contact.
Yes, and skin-to-skin contact,
yes. However, again, it's all the senses. So you could just as easily sing if you were in the home with a baby, and as long as they hear your voice, they have a continuity of contact. You could just as well use smell when you put your baby to bed at night and surround them with your smells and so on, and the baby has a sense of contact and continuity.
Okay, so stage 1 of the 6 is mainly through our senses. So like touch, smell, sight, sound.
Yes. But by the second year of life, this should develop into sameness. And so when the child can't be close, can't be with, they have a sense of being the same as you. And so it's important to work this. We both have the same color eyes. You and I here, I notice, we're blue. We would work this sameness. And
how does a parent do that? Can you just give a little example of? I know there's so many.
Ways. You're working on a physical thing. Work mommy is like that too. Me too. You work all the areas of this similarity, because in doing so, the child feels connected with you even when apart. And that is the biggest challenge for the preschooler, because the preschooler is having experiences of being away from home. So you need to work these areas of sameness, wearing the same things, the same clothes, not as far as their peers, because that's not what you want to focus on. It is more the parent and the child. One of our youngest grandsons, Ethan, in this stage, my wife Joy would be taking care of him, and he would come here and see her with this dress on and so on. Oh, you look beautiful, Nana. Can I have one like that? Oh. So they would get together and make a little dress. You could just see the absolute connection. And his ability to go away from Nana while holding her close was the fact that they were alike.
That's so lovely. So the second stage in developing a capacity for a relationship is a sense of being alike, a sameness.
But it should move further on to, in the third year of life, a sense of belonging, a sense of being on the same side, loyalty. And that's why it's so important, the ability to come alongside your child, not let anything come in between, because the connection breaks for them when they don't feel you at their side, being able to get a sense of them from inside out.
Loyalty is such a big word, as is belonging. How do they work together in this third 3-year-old stage?
Belonging and loyalty often are two sides of the same coin. Okay. I'm loyal to who I belong to who I am loyal. But if you break it apart, loyalty is about sides. And so if you want to see who a 3-year-old is most attached to, just have a mild disagreement with somebody. And of course, the 3-year-olds are not one bit rational, not one bit logical. So you see the pure attachment. They'll always take the side of those to whom they're more attached.
So those two stages, the 2-year-old stage and the 3-year-old stage, are those prerequisites before you can move on to your 4-year-old stage of your child wanting to matter as you've defined it?
In one way, in a healthy way. They can also be compensatory. That is, a child can move to a drive to be esteemed, to matter, to be significant, because they're lacking underlying things. So it's not a prerequisite in the sense that unless the first phases happen, the fourth phase won't, but it will happen in an unhealthy way. A child will cheat to be approved, to be valued, to be significant. In fact, we all cheat a bit, and we will cheat to try to measure up to gain the approval of someone, and that starts at about 4 years of age. The more secure a child is, the less tempted they are to cheat. And so the better it is, because as soon as you cheat to influence the verdict of whether you matter, whether you're loved, whether you're significant to somebody, as soon as you cheat, there is an underlying insecurity, and it's up to you. And you're in charge of the relationship now. So now you begin to be alarmed, you begin to be insecure, and we all suffer from those things. Those are our adult neuroses, and they usually started at about 4 years of age.
All right, so just as a recap, at 2 years old, children are focused on becoming like, being the same as. Then at 3 years old, they move more into the developmental stage about the importance of belonging.
Yes, part of a group, part of mom, part of dad, part of a person, part of a group, yes. And you work that. And being on the same side, you get to the child's side. A deal breaker for a child of that age in his third year is when you don't get to their side. That's such a challenge in discipline, when the behavior comes in the way, when you don't agree with them. They still have to feel as if the connection is there. So that's why when there's aggression, you focus on the frustration. That frustration got away on you. Those impulses to attack, got out. Those bad words came out of you. You take it easy on defining them this way, because that would break the connection. And so you make it easy to get to their side, to be understanding. Of course, that's true for all of us as adults. If our partners related to us this way, it would be a lot easier. So it's good. If you can figure out how to relate properly to a 3-year-old, you can figure out how to save your marriage.
That is so true. Okay, so then we move into the fourth year. A child wants to matter, to be dear to those that are close to them, as you say in your work. So then where do you go after that in your fifth year?
Well, we could write books about this, but to put it into a few words, the most beautiful thing happens. The fifth stage is a place of safety when a child gives his heart to whomever he's attached. He may fall in love with, he may want to marry.
Yeah, this is when little boys will sometimes say, I want to marry my mom age, right?
It's not gender specific, and it's certainly not exclusive. But the whole point of this is a point of development. Why do we give our hearts to each other? To hold on to each other forever. What is the brain doing here? It's developing the capacity to hold on when apart. And this is the capacity for a relationship. It's also why this needs to happen in family, because it's only in family that a relationship transcends death. Your mom is your mom, dead or alive. Your grandfather is your grandfather, dead or alive. So the relationship enables us to bridge anything that would come in between, even death. And so this is the basis of when we give our hearts to each other in marriage. Even though we know we're disillusioned by that time, we should be disillusioned by that time, we still promise to give our heart forever and hold on to each other forever. Why? Because that is what it is about, developing the relationship for this. Why? Because as humans, we don't deal with separation well. What the brain is trying to do is help us develop that capacity to answer the biggest threat in life, which is facing separation. And the answer is relationship. And if that goes well, if that unfolds, then it's the prerequisite for the final stage where a child will want to share all that is within his heart. And that usually happens around the 6th year if everything goes well. This ideally would be the time when a child is ready to go to school, because if we went developmentally, when a child gives his heart, he is now able to hold on to that person when apart. Yeah. That would be also true in a marriage. We call it emotional intimacy. The final one, psychological intimacy, where you share all that is within your heart with each other. This should start about age 6, and a child blurts out his secrets and he can't keep them inside, because it would feel as if a secret would come in the way. And so the child wants to be known, heard, seen from inside out. This is psychological intimacy, and it should actually be the basis of true friendship in adulthood.
Gordon, if these intimacies of feeling known, heard, and seen are not developed early on, where do the consequences show up?
The failure to develop these is very affected by facing separation. You can't hold on to mom and dad. You can't hold on to your family when apart from them. And so the emotions of alarm, of frustration, of separation trigger pursuit and become very, very dominant in one's life. And of course, those are underneath almost all of our human problems and mental illness.
At the beginning, Gordon, you talked about preschool years setting the stage for life. And through these 6 stages of development, that's even more evident. You package those within the relationship of family. And you've been quoted as saying you see family as the essential unit of society. Now, this is a big question, but what do you see as the key role of family? Is that something that you can sum up in a bit of a discussion?
Let me take a little bit of a different look at it.
Yes, feel free to go any direction you want.
That when we look at it from what nature is trying to do, is nature is trying to take care of us. Now, when emotions came into the picture with mammals and with birds, the whole idea of connecting, the drive for togetherness, we call it attachment now, all of this instinct of attachment is to take care of each other. And that becomes the way nature takes care of us, by attaching us to each other so that we take care of each other. And so marriage is one of those units meant to be reciprocal so that we mutually take care of each other. But the most important unit of all is the parent-child relationship. But it is dependent upon attachment there. If the parent is well attached to the child, their instincts are to take care of the child. If the child is well attached to the parent, the instincts are to be receptive to that care.
And so that's the basic unit of society.
Yes, family is the basic unit, attachment unit, where caretaking is meant to happen. And if there are problems in attachment, there will be problems in being able to take care of. It's just the way we're designed. It's just the way our brains are. We're wired for togetherness. Why? Because In togetherness is where the probability of taking care of each other happens. So many people think we have survival needs. And this was the whole point of attachment theory. The discovery is that we don't have survival needs. No mammals have survival needs. If something happens in their universe, if there's a fire, atrocity, they don't seek shelter, they don't seek safety, they don't seek food. They seek each other. And that's the way we are. If a fire breaks out of atrocity, where's mommy? Where's daddy? Where's my husband? We go to togetherness even though we face danger for it. And so it's togetherness that is the primary drive. And that is key. Once we understand it, we also understand what spooks us. And that is so important to understand for our preschoolers. The number one enemy is facing separation. And the preschooler is extremely vulnerable to this. When they're facing more separation than they can bear, they become highly alarmed, they become highly frustrated in intense pursuit of proximity. And those emotions are huge. And it's being able to find a way of holding on to them when apart that preserves that sense of connection. So that's the fundamental challenge for the parents when they send their child to daycare or preschool. How do I hold on to that child when apart? How do I preserve that connection? How can I work the relationship to do so? And from a preschooler's point of view, how do I help that child hold on to mom and dad? How do we bridge the separation? Because that will be the single most important factor that is there.
Well, speaking as a parent, of course we want that connection. So it's really helpful to understand how easily that sense of togetherness can be lost.
Now, I can give you an example of just how when we don't understand, let's say a mother of a preschooler, they're at the playground, there's other people around, and the mother decides it's time to go and is trying to get the preschooler to cooperate. But there's other people looking on, so she's feeling a little bit concerned about this. She says, come on, Marcy, we need to go. Marcy says, no, I don't want to. I want to stay. Come on, Marcy, I gave you your 5-minute warning. We need to go now. No, I don't want to. I want to stay. And then she has an ace card to play. And any mom will find out that ace card and will say, okay, Marcy, Mommy's going now, bye-bye, and we'll just disappear behind a tree or something like this and go out of view. And of course, what happens is Marcy faces separation, and it triggers 3 of the most powerful emotions we have in us. One is intensified pursuit. Mommy, wait, I'm coming. Okay? Also triggers intense frustration and intense alarm. Now, what we only see is the trigger pursuit because a child of that age can only feel one emotion at a time, not 2, only one emotion. And so that worked. So if I put a child's face into separation, say I'm going to send you to your room if you're going to do that, and we have many, many ways of doing this, put the child's face into separation, it triggers an emotion which triggers pursuit of proximity, which generally speaking makes the parent feel as if, oh, this worked, right? What the parent doesn't know is that when the child gets home, there's all of this unexpressed frustration. If there's a little sister or a little pet or something's going to get hit and doesn't realize it's connected. And what the parent doesn't know is that at bedtime, all of a sudden the child can't go to bed in their own bed because the child is alarmed. There's monsters under the bed. And doesn't realize that what happened at that event at the playground, the parent actually was using the most powerful scenario, pushing a child's face into separation, that triggered absolutely powerful emotions. Now, when we're ignorant of how emotions work, when we're ignorant of facing separation, we slip into these things all the time. And you've got to get the child back. And the first thing to do to get a child back is to engage their attachment instincts.
Well, Roy, I really wanted to hear what Marcy needed and what the parent could have considered in that playground, but we needed more time in order to address that well.
Yeah.
And Dr. Neufeld has so much more to share.
So we're going to finish this interview with a part 2, which will be released as our next episode. Dr. Neufeld will continue to address insights necessary for maintaining connection with our children.
An expansion of his theories on the role of play in our lives.
All you have to do is bring in play. You introduce play and you have got that child. And there's not a child that can resist that. That is where the magic is. It's really so simple. It's so simple.
Each Family 360 episode ends with music inspired by the words of our guest.
You heard bits and pieces of this music during this interview. Here's the song in its entirety.
And you can find it in our resource section for every episode or wherever you stream music.
I'm Rachel Cram.
I'm Roy Salmond, and thank you so much for listening to Family 360.